Revenant Act 3 introduced one of the strongest exotic shotguns in the game in Slayer's Fang, and I decided to make some really strong builds with it. I've already uploaded a Titan build for it if you'd like to check that out, but now it's time for the Hunters. I wanted to shout out my friend Grogrim for the build idea, so go check out his Twitch and TikTok pages. Now, this build is using the Gyrfalcon's Hauberk exotic chest piece, which will allow you to make everything explode with volatile energy and also allow you to stay alive in risky, close to mid-range situations. My name's Novers, and welcome back, or welcome in if you're new. Now, let's jump straight into the build. Starting off, there are a few different weapons I recommend pairing up with this build to increase its effects. Firstly, in your kinetic slot, I recommend using a weapon that stuns champions such as a pulse rifle or for unstoppable like I used in some of the clips. This slot does not specifically matter really, as it just depends on what activity you'd like to use this in. For your energy slot, we are running the heart of the build, Slayer's Fang, with repulsor brace for the catalyst to build into our overshields and survivability. Gyrfalcons will grant you volatile rounds to all of your void weapons for 9 seconds. This is great with the shotgun, as killing enemies affected by volatile will trigger a repulsor brace to give you your overshield. Slayer's Fang also packs a heavy punch with the intrinsic overload rounds and weakening effect to its Night Sworn Sight exotic perk. Also, you gain 15% increased damage while Night Sworn Sight is active, which makes this weapon a lot more viable in Master and Grandmaster content. For your heavy slot, this is also preference, but personally I like using void grenade launchers and machine guns here for the volatile from Gyrfalcons. Some good machine gun options include Commemoration and Hammerhead, and some good grenade launcher options include Revenant and Edge Transit. However, this is not a requirement for the slot. These are just suggestions to add more synergy to the build with the exotic. I just wanted to mention before we move on that we have a growing Discord and Twitch community that loves to hang out and run lots of different activities. Consider joining into our server and hopping in the live streams via the links in the description. Now let's move right into the subclass. Starting off with the subclass, we will be using Night Stalker. For the super, I recommend Deadfall Tether for ad clear and the debuff. However, you can run Mobius Quiver if you'd like for some extra damage, so it's really all up to preference. For the class ability, I like using Gambler's Dodge to instantly gain your melee charge back when dodging near enemies. For your melee, you'll be running Snare Bomb for the weakening effect, which synergizes well with the subclass and artifact perks, which I'll explain later. For your grenade, it's really all up to preference, but I like using the Vortex Grenade as it's a consistent way to get kills and does a decent amount of damage over time on enemies. But again, whatever you'd like to run here is fine. This is just my preferred option. Now let's jump right into the aspects. The first aspect with this build is Vanishing Step, which makes you invisible when you dodge. Now this is great as it's a guaranteed way to proc invisibility, and also with this build, dodging is very crucial as dodging creates invisibility, which also allows you to proc Gyrfalcon's perk. Next is Stylish Executioner. Defeating a weakened, suppressed, or volatile target grants invisibility and true sight. After performing a Stylish Execution, your next melee attack while invisible weakens targets. Now this is honestly the main aspect that we're pairing with Gyrfalcons to make this build even more powerful, as you're going to be getting invisibility almost every single kill. Your Slayer's Fang and your void weapon are both going to be proccing volatile rounds after you exit your invisibility, so this is going to be extremely strong. Now let's move right into the fragments. Now the first fragment is Echo of Cessation. Finisher final blows create a burst of void damage that causes nearby combatants to become volatile. Defeating volatile targets creates a void breach. Now as you'll learn throughout this video, void breaches are an absolute crucial part of this build, so you're going to see why this is so useful in the video footage. We're also using this fragment because it's great for building into finishers. Finishing with Gyrfalcons equipped will give you a 35% increased damage boost for 6 seconds and also grant you and nearby allies a reserve overshield. The reserve overshield also increases your dodge regeneration by 500% until you use your next dodge, which is pretty insane. Now the next one is your main survivability tool, Echo of Starvation. Picking up a Void Breach or an Orb of Power grants Devour. Now using all the different parts of this build, you're going to be spamming Void Breaches and Orbs of Power every few seconds, so you're going to have Devour up pretty much constantly. The next fragment is Echo of Persistence. This is great because it increases the duration of invisibility, overshield, and Devour. Specifically 50% increased duration to Devour and Overshield, and 40% increased duration to invisibility. Now with Night Stalker Hunter, we're going to be using all three of these, Devour, Overshield, and Invisibility. So you're going to get the absolute most out of this fragment. The final fragment is Echo of Harvest. Defeating weakened targets creates an Orb of Power and a Void Breach. Now the Slayer's Fang and your Snare Bomb are both going to be weakening, so again, you'll be proccing this just like Echo of Persistence very fast and very frequently. Alright, now let's talk about the artifact artifact perks that we'll be using with this build. Firstly, we have Authorized Mods Grenades, which decreases the energy cost of all armor mods pertaining to your grenades. This is going to free up a lot of armor energy space, allowing you to put more mods on. Next is Frenzied Hunger. Rapid Final Blows while Devour is active grant a bonus to reload and handling. So essentially, you're going to have increased reload and handling at base, as you'll be getting Rapid Final Blows while Devour is active all the time. Next is Power from Pain. Rapid Final Blows against weakened combatants grant you Devour. Now honestly, this is more of a safety net, as you're going to be proccing Devour all the time anyways, just from picking up Orbs of Power and Void Breaches. Next is one of the most essential artifact perks this season, the Thick of It. Rapid Final Blows while surrounded grant you armor charge. The next artifact perk is Curative Orbs. The first time you break a target's shield or break the shield of a guardian using their super, you create an Orb of Power. Now this is great, as this build does not have something like Velocity Baton to passively generate orbs over time, so this will give you a way to do so. Next is one of our newer artifact perks, Void Renewal. While Devour is active, Void Weapon Final Blows have a chance to generate a Void Breach. So there you go, there's another easy way to create Void Breaches using the shotgun or even your heavy weapon. The next artifact perk is Supernova. Picking up a Void Breach causes your next source of void damage to create a large weakening pulse. Now this is a great way for those weakening final blows to proc different perks and mods throughout this build. The final artifact perk is Old God's Right. After picking up a Void Breach, dealing damage with a void weapon creates a rain of seeking projectiles. Now this is probably the most fun artifact perk for Void this entire episode, because you can just rain this perk everywhere due to picking up Void Breaches constantly. Now that we've gone over the artifact perks, let's talk about the tonic that I recommend using with this build. We're going to be using the Refined Void Shrapnel, which grants you bonus intellect. It also boosts two specific artifact perks, the first of which is Void Renewal. Picking up a Void Breach, reload shotguns and grenade launchers. So this will mitigate any need to run a Void Loader, which I will talk about in a little while. The second boosted perk is Old God's Right. Create more seeking projectiles on final blows. So this will do even more damage using this artifact perk. Next, I'm going to be talking about some stats to prioritize with this build. Firstly, with every PvE build, I always recommend 100 resilience / tier 10 resilience, no matter what, because you get a 30% base boost to damage resistance at all times. Next, I would go for at least tier 8 mobility, as you're going to be wanting to get your dodge a lot more frequently, especially in GMs and things like that, because you're going to want to be getting invisible. Even though there are multiple ways to get invisible with this build, that is a guaranteed way to become invisible. It also acts as a way to generate your melee instantly, as we are not really building much into the melee in this build. The next thing I would shoot for is recovery, and yes, before you say anything in the comments, I know we are running Devour, but I do think that recovery is super important, because there will be situations in which you do not have Devour and you need to survive that last couple seconds before you can reproc Devour, and having that extra recovery to get your health back can be very clutch sometimes. Now for the last one, it's honestly your choice, discipline or strength, but I think that discipline is more important than strength, as you're going to be getting your dodge back to generate your melee instantly. So I think that I would build into discipline over building into strength, since you won't really need to worry about the charge rate of your melee. So I would go for at least tier 6 of that, but it really isn't going to be a priority over the other stats. Now let's jump right into the armor mods. Firstly, we'll be running Special Ammo Finder, Special Ammo Scout, and a Harmonic Siphon, which will in turn make it Void here. This is going to allow you to generate Orbs of Power using your heavy weapon and your Slayer's Fang, assuming your heavy weapon is Void. Also, the Special Ammo Finder and Scout helps you just get more special ammo in general, as you will probably be running out of it quite often. Next, for your arms, run Bolstering, Detonation, Firepower, and Grenade Kickstart. Now as you can see, I do run a lot of grenade mods with this build, as I think that building into your grenades over anything else is really important, because your grenades can funnel into your class ability and into your melee due to Devour. Now on the chest piece, as per usual, I recommend running 3 damage resistance mods pertaining to the threat of the activity, or even just whatever damage the enemies deal. Now on your boots, I would run Innervation, Insulation, and Void Weapon Surge. Now I'm switching it up a little bit here this time and not running something like Recuperation, because I think that you don't really need Recuperation considering you'll have Devour all the time. So I want to play into my class ability and grenade regeneration as much as possible, as well as running a Void Weapon Surge to get a 10% damage boost to my Void Weapons just from picking up an Orb of Power. Now honestly, if you'd like, you can run an extra Void Weapon Surge instead of Innervation and Insulation if you'd like, but I just personally think that it's a great extra way to get the little bit more ability energy. Now last but not least, on your cloak, I recommend running a Special Finisher mod as well as Powerful Attraction and Reaper. Special Finisher is more of an emergency use case, as you are of course course running Grenade Kickstart, which will take away your armor charges. Now, since you'll be dodging so often, Powerful Attraction and Reaper are two great mods to work with your class ability, especially since with Powerful Attraction, you'll be very close range with the build, so dodging around with Powerful Attraction will collect all the orbs of power around you, which can heal you and also give you ability energy. And also, Reaper will be giving you an extra orb of power on those weapon final blows after you use your dodge. Alrighty, now that we talked about the armor mods and a lot of the build, let's talk about the gameplay loop. Now, the gameplay loop is super important because it honestly teaches you how to use the builds at their full potential and even can help you understand on a deeper level how each of the build parts work. So with this build, make sure that you are dodging near enemies only so that you can immediately refund your snare bomb. Also, throw your grenades, try to get some grenade kills and just get some DOT on the enemies because you will be getting tons of grenades over time due to Devour. Also, use your tether quite frequently because whenever you kill enemies that are tethered, you're going to get a lot of orbs of power. Also, if you're in a sticky situation, I would recommend going for finishers, especially on things like champions, because it can proc the buffs I mentioned earlier and even give you special ammo if you have those 3 armor charges for special finisher. Now, if there are enemies very far away, I would recommend swapping to your primary weapon or your heavy weapon and making sure that you're getting all those enemies defeated, as 90% of this build is going to be short range, but it does help that you will be invisible a lot of the time, so it makes it a lot easier to use. Well, that just about wraps it up, Guardians, for the build. I just wanted to mention before you go that, again, we do have a Discord server and a Twitch stream that I do use quite frequently. Check them out in the description. We are trying to grow those at the moment, so if you do like my videos and want to check out more of my content, I would go hop in on those platforms. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. We are on the push to 11,000 subscribers. We're super close, and make sure to turn on that notification bell so you don't miss any future builds or any other videos. Also, if you enjoyed, drop a like. It just takes a couple seconds, you know what I mean? It's free and it helps me out a ton, helps the video get pushed out to even more people. Also, in the comments, if you didn't like the video, let me know why, and any other feedback you'd like to see, any other builds, maybe changes to the build, anything along those lines. Anyways, hope you all have a great rest of your day, Guardians, and peace.